choyo sambo pagyo trashi pa tuche tembe chinle yarngo da pege drolo zambe zebrache pande lame shabla luade Omo a guru vajradara sumati munisha sane karma uta vardani shri badra varsa manya sarva siddhi hum Om Guru Vajradara Sumati Munisha San Uta Vardani Shri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradara Sumati Munisha Sanekar Uta Vardani Shri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradara Sumati Munisha San Uta Vardani Shri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradara Sumati Munisha Sanekar Uta Vardani Shri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradara Sumati Munisha Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradara Sumati Munisha Sanek Uta Vardani Shri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradara Sumati Munisha Uta Vardani Shri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradara Sumati Munisha Saneka Uta Vardani Shri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradara Sumati Munisha Sanekar Uta Vardani Shri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradara Sumati Munisha Sanekar Uta Vardani Shri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradara Sumati Munisha Uta Vardani Shri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradara Sumati Munisha Uta Vardani Shri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradara Sumati Munisha Uta Vardani Shri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Dagi Jetsun Lama Tuje Che Nyamda Dala Tuje Sikso So Gebe Shesan Dala Tendo So Oyon Sumge Nawa Tsedo So Seche Ningne Solwa Debe Tse Dechen Korlo Viso Lekshun Ila Sambe Dede Malupa Geme Lunge Drupra Jingelo Sonyi Sodan Dikdun Shape Tse Dunge Namge Yinso Lekshun Labchen Sonyi Yonso Zopa Dan Chera Nyedun Chamra Jingelo Chancho Parge Ninsen Tukun Tu Nyu Peme Siudro Lekshun Chancho Drube Gegen Kunshishi Tungen de la Drubra Chingelo Dagelo Na Chola Chopa Dan Chomi Samchorang Embashu Chodan Tumbe Dede Malupa Peme Lunge Drubra Dorna Tingne Tsira Tamche Dan Techi Pardo Negaut Rese Kyamne Lama Kele Tukche Chingi Dala Sikso So Gongya Drewe Nyamda Dajala Jetson Lame Tuje Rabkon Kodan Sunge Nawa Drame Tu Nyamsunyong Kesan Toprash Kewa Kuntu Yanda Lama Dan Rame Cheki Pela Longchich Sadan Lamge Yende Rabzon Dorje Change Koba Nyurtoba Sho Pakyuke Kudan Dagi Alu Pakyuke Sundan Dagi Nga Pakyuke Tugdan Dagi Ten Yerme Chikto Lo Makyuke Kudan Dagi Alu Makyuke Sundan Dagi Nga Makyuke Tugdan Dagi Ten Yerme Chikto Chingelo chedan tsogi chonam la chancho pardo dani kyapsu chi dagi chushe gibe sonam ki drola pinchira sangye drupar sho sangye chedan tsogi chonam la chancho pardo dani kyapsu chi dagi jinso gibe sonam ki drola pinchira sangye drupar sho sangye chedan tsogi chonam la chancho pardo dani kyapsu chi dagi jinso gibe sonam ki drola pinchira sangye drupar sho.
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. With the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Haye ke da ludan jinge ruboda da mi kenam dan ruwa kunge tanam chi tsampa tamche ke tu dagi cheten to tamche ke tu dagi cheten to. Buongiorno.
Good morning. There's a verse that, if said to have, that is accredited to Milarepa, it says, to some, meditating without having first listened and understood is like trying to scale a cliff with closed hands to some meba without having listened and understood. Gompa meba is like trying to scale a mountain with your hands, with your fists closed. When we talk about meditation, the more correct word is familiarization, but I can't familiarize myself with something I don't know. In other words, to familiarize myself with something, I need to come into contact with that thing. Otherwise, I have no way to come into contact with it, to see it. So it's important for us also to have a certain level of understanding where first we can listen, and this is an initial phase. The listening is when we receive information by reading, by listening, and then there's the next phase of understanding. The phase of understanding is when we elaborate that information to the point, putting it together with other information and digesting that information until that concept is no longer something that someone told us, but becomes something of our own. And once we've completed that phase, at that point, we're ready to go. We're ready to familiarize ourselves with that concept, because the objective that we want is not about gathering knowledge, but transforming ourselves from a gross to a subtle, to a very subtle level. And here we really get into a question. Very often, we give so much importance to knowledge. And we have this idea that where there's a lot of knowledge, everything can be found therein. But in reality, knowledge is important. I'm the first one who likes to learn, who likes to study and to know. I really enjoy it, and I think it's important to know and to learn. But I strongly see that it's merely a part of it all. In these times that we live, we have this tendency to say knowledge is accessible when I need it. Information is accessible. I have the means to access this information. I have my books, I have my websites, I have artificial intelligence, whatever it is, and I can I can ask what I want, when I want, how I want it, and that knowledge is available to me at my fingertips, right? But the fact that knowledge, that information is there for us, that helps us only on that first level, that level of listening, having access to information. The second level that is fundamental is where we need to make that information, that knowledge our own. We need to chew it up and digest it, and that's not obvious. This reminds me of a time that I went to one of my masters, Geshe Thupten Rinpoche, and I told him I want to memorize the text Dreba Tunsen in Tibetan. It's a commentary of the Abhi Samaya Lankara, the clear realizations. It's one of the most important commentaries of the sutra of the perfection of wisdom of Buddha, and we use it as a reference for many studies, but it's a difficult text. And I told him that I wanted to memorize it, and he looked at me and he said, "Your teeth are not strong enough to chew it up." And he was absolutely right. And so I went to the secondary commentary that was a little bit more digested. But it's not always easy to understand something, and we're creating this illusion more and more that given that information is easy to access, that we don't need to digest it, understand it deeply. But when we find ourselves in where we have to make a judgment, where we have to take a decision, react to something, direct our mind, in that moment, that which gives us the tools to do that well is not something that we can access outside of ourselves, but it has to be something that's part of our being, our worldview, something that has become our own. And here I'm just going to open and close this side note, and then we'll go to the more specific parts of self-healing. This is one of the problems that we're finding nowadays, but we're more and more easily manipulated, because once we're not digesting information, and once we don't have our own view, result of what we experience, analyze, digest, without our own process of understanding, then the information is more and more external, and that that makes us more easily manipulated. I'm not talking about conspiracy theories. I'm saying that simply that listening to something is not enough. Having access to information is wonderful, but it's not enough. And for me personally, I've seen that when I went to study in India, I needed to take books And in debate, for example, yesterday I gave a small example, the classifications and the definitions, etc. And then when you start debating at a certain point, the other one says something that is not consistent and you want to prove something. So something you can do is to cite passages, texts that are theoretically accepted in that context. Each monastic university has its teachings in the Galupa tradition in the Nagarjuna, for example, is accepted by everyone within the Gandhian tradition. And so what we do is at this point, I want to prove this, and I take the text and I say, Lama Tsongkhapa in this text, in this passage says this, and I need to verbatim cite the text. And the other one says, yes, he said this, but he doesn't mean what he doesn't mean what you meant. And then we open up the debate on the interpretation. And once we agree on that, then we go on with the debate. But the debating aside, at the beginning, when we need to find these citations, it taught me, for example, I'm studying a subject. I think I start imagining a debate, looking at the critical points of that commentary, and then you open up other books, other authors that talk about that subject, and you take other books, and you take other books and you say, okay, this master said this about that subject, this other one said that, and you put it all together. But taking books, opening up books, looking for that same subject gives me a general view of that subject and the content of that book. In the last years in India, I was one of the first that I used the research in the computer to look for keywords for citations. These were the first years that there were actually Tibetan texts in computers. I mean, there's some that are 1,500 pages. And at some point, I was looking for a keyword. For example, I would go to a lesson. One of my teachers, Geshe Chinle Tokyo, he had this amazing ability. He would teach, and then he'd get to a point, and he'd say, okay, let's look at the citations. And he had them memorized, the more well-known, the less well-known, and he would cite them all. And it was not always possible to take notes on that, but I would take the keywords, and I would then do a copy and paste. I'd research those words and then copy and paste, and I'd have a file with all of these citations, but then I would lose the whole context. In that context, I would lose the context. I would have only the citations. And when I would have to open the actual book and see that quote within its context, it was worth much more. So being able to take and read, to look for, analyze, we need, this process of study, and I don't mean acquiring information, but a process of elaboration of that information so that we can digest it, understand it, make that information our own, our own, that changes, transforms our paradigm. This is fundamental. Are you following? Once we have understood something, at that point, we need to use that information, live that information, to make sure that it's no longer just a concept, but is part of our own being on a non-conceptual level. For example, I study mathematics. I learn certain rules of mathematics. And I'm able to repeat what they've told me. I've listened. But now I need to understand. I need to go deeper, look from different perspectives, make calculations, so that I can understand the logic that's behind it so well that I'm able to explain it to others, even in different ways, because I've really understood it. And then I take that concept of mathematics and I can apply it to my daily life. I make projects where I actually use that knowledge in different ways. And the more I use it, the more that knowledge becomes part of me until it's something extremely deep, spontaneous, that's totally part of myself. Using that knowledge is that process of familiarization until it becomes completely spontaneous. Okay. Regarding the study of Buddhism in general and the practice of self-healing, we do the same thing. When we take a meditation technique like the practice of self-healing, the process is listening, understanding, and meditating. Once we have acquired information, we need to elaborate. We need to turn it upside down, right, left. Look for defects. Really try to elaborate, to digest it until it becomes clear, until it becomes our own. And then once it's like that, we need to familiarize ourselves with that so we can take it from a conceptual level to a non-conceptual level, okay? Because if I learn how to recite, which is beautiful, it's a wonderful thing, and I do a lot of recitation, what am I familiarizing myself with? With sounds, with the melodies, with a breathing, a way of breathing, with trying to keep my mind focused on that recitation. So I'm familiarizing myself with what I do. It's really simple. I mean, we can't familiarize ourselves with something that we're not doing. We familiarize ourselves with what we do. And according to the level of our practice, we familiarize ourselves with that level. So it's beautiful to recite, etc. Like, as soon as we sit down, we're already familiarizing ourselves with staying seated, with not moving around, with not being physically agitated. As we've said before, the practice of meditation has 3 levels: how to recite, what to visualize, and what state of consciousness we need to generate. The objective is to familiarize ourselves with the states of consciousness, but we can't try right away to generate these states of consciousness without familiarizing ourselves with the tools that take us there. So we need the visualization, the recitations, the mudras, the breathing, and all the rest that exist in function of our objective, to support our objective. So let's get back to the practice of self-healing. We've seen that the practice of self-healing can be divided into 3 parts. The preliminary parts, the actual practice, and the conclusion. We've already looked at the preliminary practices, so it can be divided into 3 parts. We have the generation of the motivation, of our motivation. We have the second part, which is accumulating merits and purifying negative karma. And then we have the third part, which is to ask for and receive blessings. And the actual part of the practice we've divided into 2, generation stage and completion stage. the generation stage, we then divide it into two. The first part has to do with generating bliss and emptiness and generating the body mandala. Okay, are you following? Yesterday, we saw a little more closely the part that has to do with generating bliss and emptiness, which is something extremely important. And I repeat it again, when we talk about generating, when we talk about the union of bliss and emptiness, bliss is the state, mental state in which the person finds himself, and the emptiness is the object of perception in that moment. It's like saying, when we hear this sound, we can hear it coming from a state of joy. We can listen to that sound maybe with a mind of sadness. So that emotional state that we find ourselves in that moment, that's the observer. The object that is perceived is the object of perception. So the union of bliss and emptiness, which is a term, if you look at it more deeply in Vajrayana Buddhism, is repeated again and again and again because it's one of the keys to the practice, where bliss and emptiness, so bliss is the state of the observer, is a non-conceptual state, this state of inner enjoyment and pleasure. And emptiness is the object of perception that we experience, that we perceive, the mind of bliss that perceives the object of emptiness. And we saw also the three transformations. The first part of generation stage is about generating bliss and emptiness, and the three transformations, and then generating the body mandala. Now let's go forward. Let's move on. Generating the body mandala. What is a body mandala? Every once in a while, someone can think a body mandala is when we visualize within the body the various Buddhas, the divinities, Vairochana at the crown, Amitabha at the throat, Akshobhya at the heart, Ratnasambhava at my navel, and Amoghasiddhi at the secret chakra, and they can be in union with their mothers. In Guhyasamadra, for example, there are many other Buddhas in part of the body. Also Vajrayogini, Heruka. There are other practices where you visualize different divinities from in different parts of the body. So sometimes you can think that the term that's used is, we use the term divinity or Buddha. We can think that a body mandala is visualizing simply these divinities in parts of the body. A body mandala instead means something different. It's when we take parts, the actual parts of our body, and those parts are generated as Buddhas. So in the case of self-healing at our crown chakra, the aggregate of form arises in the aspect of Vairochana, the aggregate of discernment, which is not actually part of the body but of the mind, but they go together, arises in the aspect of Buddha Amitabha. The aggregate of consciousness arises in the aspect of Akshobhya, and the aggregate of sensation or feeling arises at Buddha Ratnasambhava, and the aggregate of compositional factors arise in the form of Amoghasiddhi. When we take, for example, within the Mother Tantra, the practice of Heruka Chakra Samvara, in that case, the various divinities of the Body Mandala are actually the subtle energy channels of the body that arise in the form of the divinity. And the five great mothers, for example, the wind element our wind element arises in the aspect of Samayatara. To be more specific, wind and also the earth element on a subtle level. So our wind, that subtle energy that we have through the various winds, energies that we have, we actually have the winds, the energy winds of the 5 elements. So the prana element of the wind arises Samayatara, green in color. The wind, the prana of earth element arises in the form of Lochana, yellow in color, of the nature of earth. Mamaki would be the nature, would be the wind of the nature of water, white in color, and the wind that is of the nature of fire arises in the form of Pandavarsini, red in color, and space, the wind of the space element arises in the form of Akashvajra, blue in color. These are parts of our body that manifest in the aspect of these divinities, these Buddhas. That's what we mean by body mandala. One function, I mean, there are other functions, but one function of the body mandala is strongly connected to what we talked about yesterday. Our energy, our prana, follows the direction of our mind. So if I focus my attention fully on a certain part of my body, where does my energy go? It goes there, to that part. When we are doing the generation stage and we're visualizing within, like in the practice of self-healing, all of our attention, is it outside ourselves or is it inside? It's inside. So we're directing our energies within. When after, and we'll see it after soon, the completion stage. Let's remember that the generation stage is a preparation for the completion stage. To actually do the completion stage practice, one needs a level of concentration and ability to direct the prana in a very strong way. So we need to be able to direct our energy in one way or another, in a non-indifferent way. So when we visualize Buddha and the various details, it's like saying our mind is used to having many objects of distraction. Our mind, it gets bored very easily, doesn't it? If we start doing something that is monotonous, after a while, we look for something else because we're used to having new objects of perception. We're used to having many distractions. So if we try to say, oh, I want my mind to concentrate on this point, even on a non-conceptual level, it's very, very difficult. If I start visualizing things, I have lots of things to think about. There's my essential channel, and there are lotus flowers, all the petals and their colors, and then there's the seed syllable, and then the symbols that expand and reabsorb, and they transform into the symbol with the details, and then the Buddhas and the details of the Buddhas and how they're each made. And there's a lot there to think about. You know, if you're doing it well, you're not going to get bored. But along this process, where is our mind being directed? It's inside. We're directing our energy within our chakras. One point is that by doing this, directing our attention to each one of these points, that's a preparation to help us absorb the various winds, these energy winds that flow throughout the body into each one of the chakras and absorb within our central channel, which will help us actually practice the completion stage and reach levels of concentration that are much deeper. So there are two states. There are two states of meditation that are very important to develop: Shine and Laktang in Tibetan, or so it's calm abiding and special insight. I'm just going to go quickly through this. So calm abiding, the Shine, is this inner state where we rest our mind on an object. It can be our breath, it can be an object we visualize, it can be a sensation, it can be anything. It's said that any phenomenon that exists is a possible object of concentration, of perception. There's nothing that cannot be that. So we choose one special object and we rest our mind on that object. The mind stays still on that object without distraction, without mental agitation or foggy-mindedness, with clarity. It stays on that, resting on that object for a certain amount of time that we choose. And by doing that, so that state is called calm abiding. Without getting into details here, the special insight is when we're able not only to stay on an object with this state of this level of concentration, but as we maintain that concentration with strength, a part of the mind is able to analyze the object itself. The metaphor is used of like a very, very still lake, and at the surface completely still. That's the stillness on the surface is the calm abiding, and then underneath there's a little fish that is swimming underneath that goes around analyzing without moving the surface of the lake. This is the state that is called special insight, vipassana or laktang. In the sutra, first we need to perfect calm abiding, shine, to then work on and train in vipassana, laktang, special insight. In the Vajrayana, you work on these two states simultaneously. Let's try to see this and how that happens. Let's take a couple steps backwards. We started the practice by generating our motivation, generating a feeling of love, of compassion, clarifying why we want to do the practice. This follows throughout the practice, and then we generated a state of bliss, and we direct our mind towards one object, which is the lack of inherent existence. Om Sabhava Shuddha Sarva Dharma Sabhava Shuddha Ham. All phenomenon are of a pure nature, and so am I. The object of concentration is the lack of inherent existence perceived from a mind of great bliss. So even if we're not able to do it perfectly, we should try to simulate that as we maintain the mind like the still lake on the lack of inherent existence from the mind of great bliss, at the same time, we imagine many other things. There are our channels, our lotus flowers, the symbols, the Buddhas, the light rays that go out, that they come back. So much happens without ever losing this concentration and this important part of our mind that is resting on the lack of inherent existence um, in this mind of great bliss. So the training is to do these two things at the same time. It's said that during the whole practice, the reality that we appears as lotus flowers, Buddhas, so many other things, but that's appearance. And even if it all appears like that, the essence is empty of inherent existence. It is of the nature of emptiness, lacking objectivity, etc. So the objective would be to keep a part of the mind on this as we visualize the various stages of the practice. At the same time, during the generation stage, we develop the concentration through these various visualizations. So what we're doing with all these visualizations is bringing our attention, as we said before, we're bringing it within. We're training to make the mind stay where we want it, without instead of letting our mind just follow the result of external stimuli. So all these various visualizations within, the point is to direct our energy within and develop a level of concentration that it is higher, a higher level of concentration. Okay, are you following? Someone asks me every once in a while, how can I develop a good level of concentration? My answer is by concentrating. There's no shortcut to learning how to concentrate, to developing concentration. And in the practice of self-healing, like in all the other tantric sadhanas, we develop concentration through these various passages of visualization. So, in the development of the body mandala, first of all, we visualize clearly our subtle body, where we have our central channel, the two side channels. The two side channels, they cross in these points that we then call chakras. Someone could say, okay, Lama, but in this tradition, they talk about 7 chakras and another 5. In Tibetan Buddhism, we have practices that talk about 3 chakras, 5 chakras, 7 chakras, 9 chakras, 32, 24 chakras. Our subtle body, our subtle body is said to have 72,000 subtle channels. These 72,000 channels cross over, they weave over in different ways. When you do a practice, like the practice of self-healing, it's not because the self-healing has 5 chakras and another practice that has 7, that one is wrong or vice versa. It's a question of emphasis that's given. It's not that, let's take the practice of Guhya Samadra. There are 32 points in the practice of Guhya Samadra. It's not necessary. One is not right or wrong. It's a question of emphasis that's given. And here we're talking about 5 main chakras: crown, throat, heart, navel. And also the navel. It's just about three fingers underneath the actual navel, and at the basis of our spinal cord. Let's say the secret chakra, and at the chakras, our side channels actually cross over. So if I have my central channel in the middle, the 2 side channels, they go down, and at the places where we call chakras, they actually entwine, they twist around the central channel, and these are called knots. These are knots that are created in the various chakras, and when we use this energy of attraction or aversion on a gross level, this makes it so that we use our side channels tremendously, and that actually suffocates our central channel. And so in this point of the practice, we imagine our central channel that's strong. We have a right channel, a left channel, that run along the side of the central channel, and they twist around at the throat, 2 times at the heart. They make two turns around the heart, each side channel, and then at the navel, and then they actually under the navel, at the secret channel, they actually enter the central channel like the handle of an umbrella. So we imagine this central channel, and as if they were these like little tubes, little branches that entwine, that twist around. So at our crown, there are 32 secondary channels. At our throat, there are 16. At our heart, there are 8. At our navel, 64. And at our secret chakra, there are 32. This is the simple description of our subtle body and how we should visualize it. There are some practices that say, for example, at the crown chakra, we visualize the lotus flower upside down. There are, in that case, the emphasis is given. There's a different emphasis where But again, when we do these visualizations, it's not about having an actual perfect representation of the atomy of our subtle body. It's about directing the energy depending on the result that we want to obtain. Does that make sense? There are practices where you visualize the channel completely straight without the side channels, because there we want to direct our energy in a certain way. We have this tendency to want to have an objective view. Oh, it's not like this. In that practice, it says it's like that. So which one is right? Which one is wrong? It's not about right and wrong. They're both correct, but they show different perspectives. In the practice of self-healing, we have our 5 chakras. Each one has a specific color. And a delicate point here when we study is a question. If the subtle winds are something that cannot be perceived by the naked eye, then how can I give them a color? So on what level do they have color? So we can look for different answers here. But what is a color? It's a light frequency, right? A color is a frequency of light. Any form of energy has its own frequency. So the various colors represent different frequencies, different ways of identifying different levels of energy that are not all the same. They have a certain type of frequency. And this is represented both by color and also by sound. So the color is directly linked to a certain frequency, and color is nothing other than light frequency. Sound is nothing other than a frequency of movement through the air. but we're talking about frequencies of energy. So at our crown chakra, the main color is white. At the throat is red. At the heart is blue. At our navel is yellow. And at our secret chakra is green. This is following the order of the 5 Dhyani Buddhas. Then we have the 5 great mothers. As we said before, the 5 Dhyani Buddhas are the embodiment of the 5 aggregates, or the 5 wisdoms. Depends on what emphasis you want to give, but let's look at the 5 aggregates in their pure state. So Buddha Vairocana is white at our crown chakra, is the aggregate of form. And the aggregate of form, in a few words, means the body. There's the inner body on all levels, gross, subtle, and very subtle. And the external aggregate of form is everything that is an object of our 5 senses, matter. In this case, we're talking about inner aggregates. So the aggregate of the form makes reference to our body of the 3 levels. Then with the other 4 aggregates are 4 different aspects of our mind. So we have also the mind is not just one block, it has various aspects. So we have at the throat chakra, red in color, Buddha Amitabha, who represents, is the embodiment of the aggregate of discernment. The aggregate of discernment is the part of our mind that attributes names and values to everything. It's the part of our mind that says this is this, that is that recognizes the specific characteristics of something that it sees and attributes a name to it, gives a meaning to it by doing so. The aggregate of discernment. At their heart chakra, blue in color, Buddha Akshobhya, the embodiment of the aggregate of consciousness. The aggregate of consciousness is the union of our 6 consciousnesses. The consciousness of the mind that perceives sound, form, smell, taste, and touch, and thoughts in general. So we could say that the aggregate of consciousness is almost like what we normally call mind, except that the mind has other different aspects too. So when we look at the aggregate of consciousness at our heart chakra, Buddha Akshobhya, and then we go to our navel chakra. Our navel chakra, yellow in color, the aggregate of sensation or feeling. So Buddha Ratnasambhava is the embodiment of our feelings, of our sensations at a pure level. And there are 3 types of sensations: pleasurable sensations of suffering and neutral sensations. Then we have this at our secret chakra, green in color, Buddha Amoghasiddhi. The Buddha Amoghasiddhi is the personification, the embodiment of our aggregate of compositional factors. The compositional factors, we mean all the characteristics that make up a thought, excluding, they include, but in this case they exclude, we can say, feeling and discernment. Those who have studied the 51 mental factors, I don't know if anyone here has studied the 51 mental factors. Has anyone followed the teachings on the 51 mental factors? The 51 mental factors form a thought. Within the 51 mental factors, there are there also sensation and discernment, and then the other 49. The other mental factors, taking away sensation and discernment, those are what we call compositional factors. So all those other characteristics, the other ingredients that make up our thoughts and emotions, um, so Amoghasiddhi is the embodiment of those, of the aggregate of the compositional factors. So these 5 Dhyani Buddhas are the embodiment of the aggregates in their pure state. And then we have the 5 great mothers. They represent instead the embodiment of the 5 elements. So we have the green wind element that manifests in the form of Samayatara, yellow earth element in the form of Lochana, white water in the form of Mamaki, the red fire element in the form of Pandavarsini, and the blue space element in the form of Akashvajra. Now, the subtle winds and the elements, they run throughout the whole body, but they have specific points, main areas where we can say they reside. Because these 5 winds are also connected to 5 types of prana, 5 types of winds. There's the all-permeating wind, there's the downward moving wind, the upward moving wind, there's the wind of fire, and the wind that upholds life. These are the 5 primary winds that are connected to these winds. And each one of these winds has a place that it resides: space in the crown, fire at the throat, water at our heart, wind at the navel, and earth at the secret chakra. For this reason, that when we do the practice of the 5 great mothers, where is the great Mother Earth, the great Earth Mother? She resides at the secret chakra, and she's yellow. So when we do the practice of the 5 great mothers, we imagine the secret chakra being yellow. Not because the secret chakra is yellow or is green, but it's a question of the emphasis that's given. And in that case, what emphasis are we giving? We're giving emphasis to the element of earth, not on a gross level. On a gross level, earth, the earth element makes reference to the more solid parts of the body, like our bones, and the fire element makes reference to our digestive system. Water would be the fluid in our body, and the wind would be for our breathing and all the arteries. On a subtle level, instead, we have the 5 elements that have to do with the subtle body. Remember, we talked about having 3 levels of body: gross, subtle, and very subtle. Here, when we're talking about the 5 great mothers and the 5 elements, we're talking about the elements in reference to our subtle body. So there are 5 winds, 5 types of prana, 5 types of energy that are connected also to specific emotions and also specific systems in our body. Given the primary the primary place where the element earth resides, so our great earth mother is at the secret chakra, and wind at the navel, water at the heart, fire at our throat, and space at our crown. Because people ask why there's this difference between self-healing and self-healing for the environment. Is one right, one wrong? Actually, no. In the practice of self-healing, in the part of generating bliss, for example, why do we visualize that order? Because we want to generate bliss. I mean, we're talking on a gross level. We're accessing that. We have the wind is increasing the fire. There's our digestive system. It's heating up the body. So it's a very specific order that those elements in that way. Instead, when we give emphasis to recognizing and transforming and identifying ourselves in a pure state with the elements on a pure level, then we visualize them in the form of the great mothers. A very important part of us, because if the 5 elements are not in harmony, then our being, the person, cannot be in harmony. Now, when we, is that clear up till here? So if we do the body mandala of the 5 great mothers, we're going to visualize our secret chakra. The number of petals are always the same, but what changes are the color depending on where we're giving emphasis. So at our secret chakra, if we give emphasis to the great mothers, the secret chakra is yellow in color because we're giving emphasis to the earth element. Instead, at our navel chakra would be green and our heart would be white. Our throat would be red and the crown would be blue. Because these are the colors of the elements in relation to each of the chakras if we're focusing on the great mothers. So what happens is when we do the practice of the elements and the great mothers, we give emphasis here. The crown is blue, being space. Just follow. Here you can see here where there's Vedocana white and the mother is blue because space is given the color blue. Here we see the fire mother is red. Here's a little trick here. But first, let's just talk about the mothers by themselves, and then we will unite the phenomena. So let's look at the mothers first. So at our crown, we have blue space mother. At our throat, red fire. At our heart, white water. At our navel, green wind, and at our secret chakra, yellow earth. And when we, because up to this point, you can give emphasis. I mean, it's the same thing up to this point. The main point, where the main difference is the generation of the body mandala, where we generate the 5 great mothers, giving emphasis to the creation and the identification of the harmony among the elements. We give emphasis. Also, the syllables change because the essence of space has the sound of e. The essence of fire is ram, water is bam, and the essence of fire is yam, and the essence of earth is Lam. It's the same as the self-healing, but the order changed. So we visualize at the so giving emphasis to the space element on a blue 32 petaled lotus flower. We have this syllable E. At our throat, there would be the seed syllable Ram on top of a 16 petaled red lotus flower. At our heart, there would be a white Bam that arises on top of a 8-petaled white lotus flower. And at our navel, there would be the Yam, green in color, on top of 64-petaled green lotus. And our secret chakra, there would be a Lam, the Lam on top of a 32-petaled yellow lotus flower. So the seed syllables is part of this process of development. There's another important part of symbolism. The seed syllable represents the body and mind on a very, very subtle level, and the symbol represents the body mind on a subtle level. And then the great mother represents the body and mind on a gross level. So we always need to start on a very subtle level. So these levels are always present regardless of the context. So in the practice of the great mothers, we have the 5 seed syllables that transform into the seed symbols. And these are the mandalas of the elements. From Yam, green Yam comes that sounds like Yam. It's in the form of a half circle. Ram transforms into the symbol of fire, the sound of Ram. At the heart, at our heart, there's like a sphere of white. Bam, sorry, I made a mistake. Let's start from the beginning. At our secret chakra, the syllable Lam, the earth mandala, arises. At our navel chakra, in the form of a half circle, the wind element arises. At our heart is water, at our throat fire, and at our crown the syllable E in the form of the mandala of space as a blue sphere that resounds with the sound of E. And then each one of these element mandalas arise in the form of a great mother. So wind transforms into the aspect of Samayatara, green in color. And one way of representing, as Rinpoche has chosen, they have one of symbols that represents the symbol. So the space mother has a mirror, or each mother has in her hand an implement that represents that actual element. This is the representation and generation of the great mothers. When we do the generation of the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, the colors change and the symbols change because we give emphasis on our aggregates and in their pure form of our 5 Dhyani Buddhas. So these 2 practices actually put emphasis on two different parts of us. The elements are extremely important. The aggregates are extremely important. So we can unite them. They can be done separately, but they can also be united. So when they're united, we have a little technical problem at the starting. So And so, first of all, what color should the lotus flowers be? It's not really a problem. Actually, the answer's already given to us. It's not our problem. But we could ask ourselves, so is the lotus flower at our crown white or is it blue or half and half? How can we do this? And once I asked Rinpoche, and he gave a nice answer, and somebody could say it's even a little, maybe a little macho. He made the joke that when a couple gets married, the bride goes to live at the house of the husband. So the position and the color follow that of the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, and it has nothing to do with father, mother, male or female. But in this case, we're giving more emphasis to the aggregates than the elements, as if the elements are a complementary part of our being. At the basis of our being, there's body and mind. So we have the basis are 5 aggregates, and then we have many aspects. In NgalSo Madre, for example, we could say that it's a version that is more complicated than it's like the practice. It's a more complicated version of self-healing because in there we have in addition to the 5 aggregates and the 5 elements, there are the 5 there are the 5 parts of our articulation, our joints. There are different aspects of our being. Also, our 5 senses. So let's set apart this idea of male and female. These are just mind games that we play. Let's look at what we are made of. If we start with that, at the essence, we're made up of body, speech, and mind. Body and mind, mostly, which are the 5 aggregates. And then from that, going in more detail, we can separate and give emphasis to the winds. And then we can give emphasis also to our senses. And we can go on and into many other aspects, detailed aspects. So here we're giving emphasis to our aggregates. So when you unite these 2 practices, we are going to follow the order and the color of the 5 Dhyani Buddhas. So we have white at our crown, red at our throat, blue at our heart, yellow at our navel, and green at our secret chakra. Now there's a tricky point here. There's a slippery part here. It doesn't actually follow that same logic, which is at our crown chakra, we have Buddha Vairochana together with the Great Space Mother, who is blue. At our throat, we have Amitabha, and fire, who is red, the Fire Mother. At our heart, we have blue Akshobhya, and we have Water Mother, who is white in color, Mamaki. But what happens? The aggregate of feeling, so Buddha Ratnasambhava, actually goes together with the element of earth, Lochana, when instead the aggregate of composition, the aggregate of compositional factors goes together with Samayatara, who's green in color. So that's why when we unite the practices, there's this difference. We visualize at our navel, there's Ratnasambhava with Lochana, the Earth Mother, and at our secret chakra, we have Amoghasiddhi with Samaya Tara. And here you can see, starting from these images, we have Amoghasiddhi together with Samaya Tara. We have Ratnasambhava and Lochana, Akshobhya with Mamaki, Amitabha with Pandavarsini, and Virochana with Akashvatra. Are you following why we've made this change? Surely there are explanations that go deeper, and we can look at the correlation between the element of sensation and earth and the relationship between wind and compositional factors. For example, Amoghasiddhi, one characteristic of Buddha Amoghasiddhi is that as the action is movement, is a wrathful energy, it's a non being without doubt, and that corresponds to wind, movement. And what's a characteristic of Ratnasambhava? Generosity. What is the element that represents generosity? Is earth. The earth that gives. At our heart, we have Akshobhya. Akshobhya represents love, compassion, the part of the part that, let's say, the more emotional part, spontaneous joy. What element corresponds mostly to emotions would be water. And at our throat, we have, on one side, unlimited desire that transforms into satisfaction and concentration. This single pointed in concentration, that's actually one symbol of a concentration is a triangle, and fire represents this concentration, and it's connected to being very sharp, like concentration is. And our body, Virochana, that represents the correct view of reality, the basis on which everything exists, the interdependence, and what is the element that is the basis of all other elements? Space. So there is a correspondence between them, and we can even deepen this more. Are you following? Does someone have any doubt? The channels are always the same. That never changes. The number of channels are always the same. You just need to understand two things to remember. That first, remember the 5 Dhyani Buddhas and their colors. So we have Vairochana at our crown, that is white, then red, blue, yellow, and green. Then we should see the 5 elements and the relationship that they have. So we have space at our crown, and she's blue. Fire at our throat, red. So red with red. Water at our heart, emotions, water at our heart is white in color. And then we have generosity at our navel is yellow, like earth. And then wind at our secret chakra, wind and movement, no fear of Amoghasiddhi. So we make this correlation. Okay. Now, let's in the generation of the body mandala, we started by seeing a fundamental point, which is when we talk about a body mandala, we're not simply visualizing the divinities within our body. They are actually parts of ourselves that are manifest in a certain way. So we saw that the 5 Dhyani Buddhas represent the 5 aggregates, and the 5 great mothers are the embodiment of the 5 elements on a subtle level, the 5 primary winds. Now let's see the 5 steps that can be applied to both practices, the 5 Dhyani Buddhas and the 5 great mothers. So what are these passages? What's their meaning? And so the first passage is the arising of the generation of the lotus flower. But the lotus flower actually comes from the syllable pam. So the first passage is a little bit complicated to understand, but it should be said that Mun Jang Nga in Tibetan, Nakye, would be the generation through. So this is coming from emptiness, in Tibetan, the 5 are. So the word Chanchupa, Chanchup also means enlightenment, but Chanchupa means to having perfected. This ability to perfect something. So it's a bit like saying the first passage is perfecting emptiness, and then we perfect the lotus flowers, and then the seed syllables and the symbols until we perfect the complete body. Even though it's not a good translation anyway. On a practical level, in each one of our chakras, we visualize that from the lack of inherent existence, from the fact that of the actual interdependence among all phenomenon, arise these lotus flowers. So from Pam, it's as if each chakra, there's a kind of energy. There's nothing in the chakra. There are the channels, and then an energy that moves, vibrates with the sound of Pam. And then from Pam comes the lotus flower, Pam Le Pema. And then that's the syllable, there's the symbol of the lotus. So with an energy that vibrates with the sound of Pam, a lotus flower arises. Green at our secret chakra, yellow at the navel, blue at our heart, red at our throat, and white at our crown chakra. When we talk about lotus flowers, it's very important to remember that lotus flowers represent our channels, which are perfectly balanced. So we're giving emphasis to our secret chakras. We're giving emphasis to our channels perfectly balanced, and that central part of the lotus flower has the same diameter as our central channel, and the petals, they open up in the various directions and they form the whole chakra, and they actually go into the central channel. They start from the central channel. And so we recite Pam Le Pema, and we give it the color. Pam Le Pema Jangu. Jangu means green. Pam Le Pema Serpo. Serpo means yellow. Pam Le Pema Nompo means blue. Pam Le Pema Marpo. Marpo means red. Pam Le Pema Carpo. Carpo means white. Okay? So, in reality, when we do Pam Le Pema, this recitation, we're describing the visualization. So we do Pam Le Pema Jangu. We're describing from the syllable Pam, a green lotus flower arises. Pam Le Pema Serpo. From the syllable Pam, a yellow lotus flower arises. Pam Le Pema Nompu. From Pam, a blue lotus flower arises, Pamle Pema Marpo. From the syllable Pam, a red lotus flower arises, Pamle Pema Karpo. From the syllable Pam, a white lotus flower arises. We're describing that process. The mudra that we do is the union of two mudras called Pekor Kichagye, and it's that the first mudra is the lotus turning mudra, where our wrists are parallel practically, and normally the hand at the bottom is more closed, and the one on top is more open. This is the lotus turning mudra that we use it, and we use it in many different practices, many different contexts. And then we do the mudra of the liberation, where the fingers cross towards our body, and then our wrists touch, making this sound. And this is called the mudra of the liberation, and it's used a lot in a specific practice for people who are actually in the parto, who have left their body. So this mudra of liberation is used a lot. And so as we're doing the lotus turning mudra, it's as if we're putting our channels in the right position, and when we open up, we visualize these petals that open up, and that blocked energy with this sound. It's like a pop. That blocked energy is no longer blocked, and the energy can flow. So when you do the practice, don't make that a thought. For example, it's difficult during at our secret chakra. It's a little hard to make that sound. It's easier at the higher chakras. We shouldn't fixate too much on the sound. It becomes a little easier once we get to our heart chakra up. So what is it that we visualize? We visualize that in each one of our chakras, this lotus flower that opens up clearly with the petals that are perfectly aligned. What should we feel? We generate this feeling, this state where we perceive our energies that flow. They flow naturally, spontaneously. We're generating this inner feeling that our subtle body is balanced. This is the state of consciousness that we try to induce as an experience. This inner awareness that we induce in this part of the practice. The lotus flower, among other things, represents the condition for the birth of something, the arising of something. For a seed to sprout, it needs a fertile soil externally, and inside, for a person to grow, an actual fetus to grow, it needs a healthy womb. So we need to have a healthy and balanced inner environment in order to develop our potential to their maximum level, our aggregates and our elements. The next step, after having generated the lotus flowers, we generate the seed syllables. The seed syllables, as we said yesterday, there are two characteristics. A syllable is a sound, and it's not correct to say a letter. There's actual syllables. They're sounds, and they can be represented with letters. But when we visualize the seed syllables, there's a tradition of visualizing the Tibetan or Sanskrit letters. Well, but actually, even if I put Tibetan letters or Sanskrit letters, or the Tibetan letter that represent, for example, hum, you know, are they letters? Are they parts of a letter, or is it a sound? It's a sound. So we can't, if we visualize Om, Ah, Hum, Tram, Ri in Tibetan, or actually in Sanskrit, we can do that too. But from my point of view, the best way to visualize in this context is to visualize a point of light. It's described that the seed syllables are like points of light, as big as a mustard seed, that is within the lotus flower, within the central channel. So it's a point, for example, be like a white point of light that vibrates with the sound of Om, a red point of light at our throat that vibrates with the sound of Ah, and the blue that vibrates with Hum, and the yellow point of light that vibrates with the sound of Tram, and green and a point of light that vibrates with the sound of Ri. Or we can, instead of Tram Ri, we can do So Ha. Like in the Tara Chittamani practice, it's Om Ah Hum, So Ha, Svaha. Both systems are valid. Again, it's a question about where we're putting our emphasis. Normally, in the practice of self-healing, we use Om Ah Hum, Tram Ri. Yellow Tram, green Ri. It doesn't mean that it's wrong to use Om Ah Hum, Svaha. They're both valid in the same way. But just to simplify, let's choose one line, and so let's choose Tram Ri. So if we do the practice of the five great mothers, we have A, Ram, Bam, Yam, Lam. What happens? The seed syllables represent our potential. They represent our aggregates, our elements. They represent the essence of our qualities. That these qualities need to be developed. So once we do make a seed syllable and we unite our hands at each one of our chakras, Om Ah Hum Tram Ri, where we can recite it with a melody, Om Ah Hum Tram Ri, or Om 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 Ah 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 Ah. You can emphasis one at a time, or all five together, all five one after the other. What we visualize, there are two levels of visualization: the simplified one, and then the one that is more extensive. The simplified visualization, we bring our attention into visualizing the seed syllables within our chakras, and we generate the awareness of identifying our essence with that quality. We identify with our potential. We remember that it's something that we can develop. Simply, we're focusing on that. The more extended version is after having focused our energy on the energy of each of the seed syllables, we should enact Tunyiche. Um, we should fulfill the two purposes. The two purposes have the function of accumulating positive energy to allow that characteristic, that quality to develop. In other words, there is that seed in the soil. We need to add some water. We need to nourish it. We need to water the seed for it to sprout. What, how can we create these virtuous causes? What did we say yesterday? What's the easiest way? Best way is about sharing, generosity, and there are two ways of sharing towards holy beings and also towards sentient beings. So from the syllable Om or A at our crown, light rays emanate of the same color, white, going to all holy beings, each one of them, as the light rays absorb into them, they experience a feeling of bliss. And then those light rays come back to us and reabsorb into our crown simultaneously or success just right after. These light rays emanate and they go to all sentient beings. And if we go into details, they adapt to all the needs and the capacities of each one. They realize the four forms of generosity. So the light rays transform into the material help, food for those who are hungry, etc. Transform into love and affection for those who need emotional support. These light rays, nectar, they transform into protection for those who are in danger or need that kind of support, and also transform into the Dharma for those who are ready to receive the Dharma, bringing them to be free from their suffering and helping them reach a level of peace and balance. And when these light rays come back to the chakra, it's like, as they go out and then they come back in and reabsorb, it's like we are increasing its potential. Imagine a seed that is being watered and it just can't hold we can't hold it anymore. He can't just stay a seed. It needs to sprout, and it can't contain that potential there within the seed, and it just bursts into a sprout. It bursts into the syllable. So an Om white at the crown transforms into a white Dharma wheel. The blue and the A blue transforms into the space mandala. And then the same thing happens at the throat. And someone have already asked me in the past, I have a problem, Lama. When I imagine that light rays go from the crown chakra to all beings, what do I do with all the beings who have reached enlightenment after all my light rays have gone to them? What am I supposed to do with all those beings who are now at peace? And so now I go to the next chakra. What happens? So does that mean that those beings are no longer in a state of peace, or did I miss somebody? Okay, some people are really literal. Let's go beyond this. It's actually, the beings are innumerable. The point here is it's not a technical, objective point, like, oh, I visualize every single person. No, we are training. We're training ourselves in love, in compassion, in equanimity, in joy. We need to train in these passages. You remember that when we were at the beginning with the preliminaries, when we do the emanations of light, with equanimity that go to everyone. We're generating equanimity. When we want the beings to be free from suffering, we're training in compassion. When we imagine that they have a state of peace, we're training in love. And when we are happy for their state of balance and peace, those light rays come back to us and we're training in joy. So it's a way to also accumulate merit. So we repeat this process for the 5 seed syllables. A mudra that introduced in the practice of self-healing for the environment, making peace with the environment. I think we can really integrate it here. It wasn't introduced when we did self-healing, and it's this following mudra. In each one of the chakras, we emanate and we reabsorb from our crown, from Om. We emanate and it goes out, makes offerings, makes acts of generosity, and then it comes back and it reabsorbs. So first the holy beings, and it comes back, reabsorbs, and then to all the sentient beings, and then reabsorbs. And the same thing at our throat chakra, light rays and nectar, red in color, that go out and then come back in. The same thing, our heart, our navel, and our secret chakra. So when we do it more simplified, we keep our hands at each chakra, Om, Ahum, Cham, Ri. So we simply generate the seed syllables when we have a little bit more attention, more time. As we do the Om, this gesture helps the mind to remember, it guides the mind to emanate and then reabsorb. Just quickly, just a side note, but that's important. In the practice of self-healing, we often use this mudra, the mudras of the gestures. We unite our hands. What's the meaning of this mudra? So on one side, it's very used when you greet someone, when you praise someone, you put your hands together. In our tradition, when you do that, our thumbs are actually inside, possibly touching the base of the ring finger. It's not that we have to make effort there, but a superficial reason is when we unite our hands in respect, it's like a jewel. So we are coming with something in our hands. We're not empty-handed. If yesterday we said in the Asian culture, for example, when you go to someone, you never go empty-handed. And when you praise someone with your thumbs inside, it's like coming with a jewel in our hands. We're coming with something, not empty-handed. On a deeper level, it has different meanings. The thumbs are at the base of our ring fingers. We find this at the end of self-healing when we do Om Bishwa Shanti. This ring finger is where there's a subtle energy channel, then we can call it a meridian. This subtle energy channel is called the channel of bliss, connected to pleasure, enjoyment, bliss. And so when, for example, at the end of self-healing, when we do Om Bishwa Shanti at the base, what does that represent, touching the base of our ring finger? We're not blocking, but we're stopping a little bit this bliss channel to remind us that bliss is a means and not an end. For example, Lama Tsongkhapa in the commentary of Guhyasamaja at a certain point explains very clearly, he says, the first condition to be able to use bliss as a tool along, for our spiritual growth is the non-attachment to pleasures themselves. Because yesterday we talked a lot about that state of pleasure and enjoyment is a non-conceptual experience. It's a vehicle, a tool that can bring us to deeper states of consciousness. But on one side, it's favorable, but it can be dangerous too. It's positive. It's favorable because pleasures are pleasurable. We like them, we want them, and we naturally have attachment and desire for pleasure. When we have a feeling of strong pleasure, we want that feeling to be repeated. What's the danger therein? That we can develop so much attachment that that feeling of pleasure becomes an end in and of itself. So what someone wants is to feel the pleasure and not take himself to a deeper state of consciousness with love and wisdom. So that becomes the final objective, and that's a big trap. So that's why we need to remind ourselves. We put our thumbs at the base of our ring finger. We remember that pleasure is a means, but it's not an end in and of itself. Something else too is that this meridian is connected directly to our heart, and this represents also the absorption of our winds, our subtle prana, into our heart, which happens at the time of death, and ideally within certain meditation states of meditation. So it's also to remind us of the absorption of our energy winds within our central channel. So also when we make a Vajra fist, we're there too, where the thumbs are touching the base of our ring finger with the same meaning. And also when we do the inner offering, yesterday we talked about the inner offering, the development of bliss. We do it with our ring finger of our left hand because we are offering bliss, and this represents the channel of bliss. The energy that is connected to this channel is a very powerful channel, and if one doesn't know how to control it, it becomes dangerous. When one gets married, where does the ring finger go? It goes on to the left ring finger. It's said that the bliss channel is mostly this one on the left hand, and so when once someone is married, one should have a good control over this energy. If one doesn't have control over this bliss meridian channel, it's probable that that person won't be able to maintain the commitments that he or she has taken. It's also in relation to the use of gold or silver and different precious stones. It's said actually that rings should balance and contain or nourish the various energies, related to their various channels. So it's not just about adornment, but about balancing energy. So that's another subject. So instead, our right hand represents method, male energy, love, compassion, generosity, enthusiastic effort. It represents the part of method. Our left hand represents female energy, the correct view of reality. So the right hand is the more logical part, the left part is the more intuitive, emotional part. They're the two parts that compose our being, and when we unite them, it means harmony and balance between male energy and female energy, between the right and the left sides of our being. There's an exercise. I don't know how connected it is to this or not, but I make some kind of connection. And then those of you who want to, after lunch, you can do it. It's an exercise of kinesologia. So it's very easy. With one hand, actually you need two people to do it well. So you keep you keep two fingers pushed together. It doesn't matter which fingers they are. And then the other person needs to try to open up the fingers, just see how much strength you have. And one should visualize. You can actually physically see or just imagine two parallel lines. And then these two lines cross with an X, and see if there's a difference. So on one side, I want to say it, but I want you to also experience it for yourselves first, so you're not influenced by it. But when you do this exercise, and it's really interesting, do this exercise while you're telling the truth, and do this exercise when you're telling a lie. The actual strength of your body changes. When our brains, right and left, need to work together, we have more strength. When we're doing something parallel, let's say, we have less strength. So when we see the two parallel lines, we have less strength than having the cross. I'm not the right person to talk about this, but the explanation, what I understand, is the use of our brain. Our left and right brain, parts of our brain are working together. They're united. Even physically, when we're uniting the right and left part of our bodies, our beings together by making this prayer mudra together. Just doing this mudra at the center of our heart creates a certain amount of balance and harmony. Imagine the difference, or a greeting where we imagine greeting someone where we're bringing our body together, body and mind together in harmony and balance, or we're just extending one hand to shake our hand with somebody else. But look at in our culture, we give emphasis mostly to do we give more emphasis to the more emotional or more logical part of our brain? So instead, the logic, the left part of the brain takes care of the right part of our brain, and the right part, and vice versa. And so it said the two side channels actually on our subtle body, they're inverted, and the same thing for our brain. So in any case, when we unite our hands, it has this function of generating balance and harmony and union of our various characteristics. Logic together with intuition, the more emotional part, the understanding with the feeling, we're uniting this. this male energy together with female energy, method together with wisdom, bliss, and emptiness. We can give many different names that for when we unite our hands together. So this mudra is one of the most important mudras that has meanings, many different levels of meanings. There's actually even another meaning. On our right hand, we have five, five. We have 5 fingers, the 5 Dhyani Buddhas. In the left hand, we have 5 fingers, the 5 great mothers. When we put them together, it's the union of the 5 Dhyani Buddhas and the 5 great mothers. Again, it's the representing, again, we're uniting our aggregates with our subtle winds. So we do it when we do Om Ahum Chari, and we generate the seed syllables in each one of our chakras. The next part, we enter into the generation of the symbols. As we said before, a seed should be watered, and once it's watered, it's going to sprout. That sprout should be also watered until it becomes the actual plant that can give its harvest, that can bear fruit. And so the essence of our qualities are represented by the seed syllables, and with this process of generosity, making offerings to holy beings and acts of generosity to sentient beings, they transform into symbols. The symbols represent those qualities in the phase of development. So the symbols that we're going to use for the 5 great mothers are easy because they're the symbols of the elements. So from a very subtle element, wind, it manifests in a more gross level in the form of the element. It's the energy itself, but has a form. So wind is a half, is the half green, half moon. Start from the crown. So space is a blue sphere. The fire is a red triangle. Water is a white sphere at a heart. And the wind is a half moon, green half moon, and earth is like a yellow cube, a yellow square at our secret chakra. And the 5 Dhyani Buddhas have symbols that we need to learn, and we need to learn and give them meaning. They're antique symbols that in our culture we don't know them anymore. So in Vairochana, the family of Vairochana is represented by the Dharma wheel. If someone goes to Nepal, for example, most temples that you see are represented by the 5 Dhyani Buddhas. And very often, instead of having the Buddha, you'll have the symbol. So how do you know what side of the temple it is? Depending on the symbol. So Vairochana is represented by the white Dharma wheel, Amitabha by a red lotus flower, Akshobhya from a blue Vajra, and here the symbol becomes more complicated because it doesn't even exist in our culture, this object, Vajra. Okay. Then we have Ratnasambhava at our navel, is represented by a yellow jewel. And often the jewel has some fire around it. It's not real fire, but it represents, it's just a jewel that just it radiates some brightness. You can see, for example, on the roof of the temple, where there's where there's the elevator, you can see this jewel. This is the symbol of Ratnasambhava. And at our secret chakra, we have a double Vajra, green in color. On the thrones, you can see the double Vajra. Here, even right in front of me, there's a double Vajra. The double Vajra represents stability. It's connected to courage. It's connected to certainty. And in this case, Buddha Amoghasiddhi. The jewel represents increase. Growth is one of the characteristics connected to Ratnasambhava. There's a very specific characteristic connected to the symbols that we haven't talked about before. So let's take one step back. There are 5 types of energy, 5 types of actions that are also connected to the 5 Dhyani Buddhas. So we have the order of these actually follows the cardinal directions. So in this case, Akshobhya is in the center, and let's start at the east where there's Vairochana. At the white east, Vairochana, what's the energy? And on the roof of the temple, we have that order. So our east side is white, Buddha Vairochana is the energy of pacification, is this action of pacifying. So when there's a conflict, the first type of energy that one should use to confront that or to pacify that conflict is energy of pacification. So we use your energy of pacifying to calm the conflict. The second type of holy, sacred action is a yellow Ratnasambhava in the south, is the energy of increase, growth. We increase the qualities, we increase the positive things, the joyous things. For example, when there's a conflict, sometimes we're not able to simply pacify the situation, we should try to increase the positive things. Before being able to pacify, sometimes we should do something positive together. Maybe just eat something nice together and do something positive so we can pacify. So this is the energy of increase. So we can increase on any level, body, speech, and mind, and the environment. Then we have Buddha Amitabha in the west, red in color, and here we talk about the energy of, and sometimes it's called the energy of power, but I prefer to use the term seduction. When we try, for example, when there's a conflict, when there's a strong conflict, maybe even aggression, first we try to pacify, we're not able, then we try to do something positive, and that doesn't change. The next type of energy would be seduction on 3 different levels. Seduction means I direct you towards something, or by means of a prize. If you do this, you will get something, or some kind of punishment. So a threat. So be careful. If you do this or don't do that, this is going to happen. Or I can give you a moral question. Normally, we can seduce someone or seduce ourselves. I mean, these qualities, first of all, are used with ourselves. From a moral point of view, it's an energy of influence, of directing, of influence. And sometimes we're not able to pacify, we're not able to increase or seduce. And at that point, we get to green Buddha Amoghasiddhi in the north. There's this force of opposition. Sometimes the expression wrathful is used, wrathful energy, wrathful action. So one should use an energy that is as strong as the energy that one wants to oppose. If someone comes to hit me and I keep my calm and I try to pacify and it doesn't work, I try to direct something positive. I try to give all the reasons why you shouldn't. I try to seduce you and it's still not working and you're still hitting me. What do? I use strength to stop that action, not to destroy the other, but to stop that strength, that force that's coming towards me. The important point here is that process of development, how can I say, to actually have control over. First, we need to first learn how to pacify, and then we can learn how to increase. And then once we know how to increase, then we can learn how to seduce, and then after we've learned how to seduce, then we can use the power of opposition. And then the energy in the center, blue akshobhya. Akshobhya represents the action that includes all the other actions. So that one action has all the qualities of the four actions together. So which is the hardest part. So the five Dhyani Buddhas also represent these 5 types of energy, these 5 types of actions. That double Vajra represents oppositions, it represents protection, it represents a strength that opposes another. It's one of the meanings of the double Dorje, double Vajra. The jewel represents growth, increase, Ratnasambhava. The Vajra at the heart, in this case, Akshobhya, represents the enlightened mind. And one meaning of the Vajra, and I'm not sure you can see from so far, it has 3 parts, 1, 2, and 3. So it has a nucleus here in the center, and then there are 2 parts, one above and one below. These 2 parts represent male and female energy. It's this way. Male energy, female energy that unite in the center in perfect harmony. Method and wisdom, bliss and emptiness. And this is represented also with the Dorje, which represents also the enlightened mind, the perfect state of balance and harmony, reason and feelings, male and energy, etc., represented here by the Vajra that is at the heart. At our throat chakra, the red lotus flower represents seduction. Even the flower, this energy of power and seduction connected to Amitabha. And then at the crown chakra, we have the Dharma wheel. The Dharma wheel, white, represents Buddha's teachings, where the essence of the teachings is the correct view of reality, the most important quality connected to Buddha Vairochana. So each one of the 5 symbols has its own way of representing the qualities and characteristics that are relative to each of the chakras and the 5 Dhyani Buddhas. What's important is the more familiarity we have with the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, then the more value and the more meaning the symbols have. So we should, over time, we should continuously try to nourish our the meanings and our understanding. So when from the symbols, light rays and nectars go out like the seed syllables the same way to the holy beings and then to the sentient beings. They go out and then they come back in. So to the holy beings, then they reabsorb, to the sentient beings and they reabsorb, and then they transform into the Buddhas. In that moment, that's where we do the mudras of the 5 Dhyani Buddhas. And this is the time in the practice where we start to do that. So following the practice of the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, we have Rile Natso Doje Changuri, the mudra of Amoga Siddhi. The mudras also have another characteristic. They speak without words. The gestures have a power of directing our energy and directing the mind without having to speak. If I do this gesture, what message am I giving? Come towards me or stop. Stop is this. It's a gesture of opposition. And what is the action related to the Buddha Amoghasiddhi is no fear and opposition. What about the gesture of Ratnasambhava, the mudra of Ratnasambhava? Try to make this mudra and think, I'm not going to give it to you. No, instead, I don't want to give it to you. It would be this. But instead, when I make this gesture, what message am I giving? I'm showing, I'm sharing, I'm sharing, I'm giving, I'm increasing. It's called the mudra of supreme generosity. And then we have Akshobhya. This is the mudra of stability, or the earth-touching mudra. What's a sign of stability is the earth, except, earthquakes aside, the earth is the most stable of elements. So touching the earth represents stability. Amitabha, the mudra of meditative concentration. And this mudra takes us to the center of our body, and again we have our triangle that represents concentration, and then Virochana, it's the mudra, it's called the Dharma Chakra mudra. It's the mudra of the Dharma wheel, the mudra of the teachings of Buddha, the essence being wisdom, the correct view of reality. That's why it's also called the mudra of wisdom. Lama Ganchen used to call it the okay mudra, which means that when there's wisdom, everything is okay. And so this is the mudra of Virochana. What is in common with all of these mudras? Just observe for a moment. What do all these mudras have in common? The left hand is always in the same position, but the mudra is not only composed of made up of the right hand, there's always the left hand. The left hand, the left side, is a female energy, wisdom, and the right hand, the right side, is male energy. Method is so remember that you can also see the right as appearance, and the left hand, the female energy, is essence. So the left hand is always in the mudra of meditative concentration. It represents the part of our mind that is constantly in a meditative state on the essence of reality, the lack of the ultimate nature of all phenomenon, the lack of inherent existence of all phenomenon. So when I said before that the mind should keep there should be one part of the mind of bliss, that is aware of the emptiness of all phenomenon, and another part of the mind that goes on and visualizes all the different parts of the passages. So the essence of female energy is the essence of wisdom, and the right hand represents action, interaction, appearance, that which where we interact with everything and every being. So the right hand is the one, is no fear, generosity, stability, concentration, and Dharma teachings. Instead, our left hand stays concentrated in a state of concentration. So it represents the harmony between these two things. Are you following? So these are the mudras of the 5 Dhyani Buddhas. So in the practice of self-healing, we do Rile Natso Dorje Janguri, Tamne Norvo Setbutam, Hum Le Dorje Nompuhum, A Le Pema Marpo, A and Om Le Korlo Karpo Om. What do these words mean? Ri, le means from, depending on the context, but in this context, le means like from. Ri, le. So from ri, natso dorje, double vajra, double jangu, green, ri, marked by the syllable ri. So, from the syllable ri arises a green double vajra marked by the syllable ri. Ri le natso dorje jangu ri. Tram le, from the syllable tram, norbu, jewel, serpu, yellow, tram, that vibrates with the sound of tram. Hung le, dorje, nompo hung. From the syllable hung arises a nompo, a blue dorje, vajra, that vibrates with the sound of hum, hung le dorje nompo hum. A le pema marpo a. From the syllable a, a lotus flower arises, pema, that's red in color, marpo, that vibrates with the sound of a. A le pema marpo a, that vibrates with the sound of a. Om le korlo karpo om, from the syllable om. The korlo is the Dharma wheel and karpo is white. A white Dharma wheel arises that vibrates with the sound of om. When it says, we say marked by the syllable om, it means it vibrates from om. And someone could say, well, this is just a description of the visualization. Why don't we just recite it in Italian or English, in our own language? Lama Ganshin, first of all, he taught to international disciples, and being able to do the practice all together is special, has a special reason. We use one set of terms that are valid for everyone, and these teachings, these practices come from Tibet. And so there's consistency between what we receive and where it came from. These are terms that have been used for centuries and centuries. And the Tibetan language has its way of being that is really that really gives easily to recitation, because many words are made up of one syllable or maybe only two, so it flows well, and we use the same number of syllables. So when we recite and when we sing, it's much better. I was even trying to describe certain verses in English or in Italian with that same quantity of syllables to see if it were possible, and it's just not. Even when you write with the same number of syllables in verse, some words use 2 syllables, or maybe even 4 or 5. That flow of breath is different. So this is another reason why we keep the Tibetan Of course, then we also have to consider the transmission, the lineage, and the other characteristics. So we keep the Tibetan, but it's important for us to understand the meaning. When we do the practice of the mothers, we describe the symbols of the mothers. So there we have so when we do Lam Le Alung Kil Jangu Yam, so from the syllable Yam, the wind mandala Lung Kil, green in color, Jangu, marked by Yam. Then Lam Le Sa Kil Serpo Lam. So Lam from the syllable Lam, Lam Le, from Sa, which is earth. Sa Kil is the earth mandala, yellow in color, marked by Lam. So imagine saying in Italian, Lam le sa kil serpo lam. How is that compared to lamb, saying it in our other language? Then we have at our heart chakra, Bam le chuki karpo, Bam from the syllable Bam, Chu is water, Kil mandala, we have the water mandala, white in color, Karpo, that vibrates with the sound of Bam. Then at our throat, Ramle, Me Kil. Me is fire, Kil is mandala, Marpo is red, Marpo Ram. So the fire mandala arises marked by the syllable Ram, and then at our crown we have E Le Nam Kil Nompo E. So from the syllable E, Nam means space, Kil mandala, the space mandala, blue in color, vibrating from the syllable E. And then light rays and nectar emanate from these syllables. They go out, they come back in, and then they transform into the great mothers. The complete tree, from the seed to the sprout, now to our fruit-bearing tree. So we have a white Vairochana at our crown. We have a red Amitabha at our throat. Sorry. Yeah, so a white Vairochana at our crown, a red Amitabha at our throat, a blue Akshobhya at our heart. We have a yellow Ratnasambhava at our navel, and a green Amoga Siddhi at our secret chakra. And if we do the making peace with the environment, we make the form of the great mothers at the appropriate chakra. Our qualities are, the point of doing all this is have the mind to bring our qualities to their maximum potential. Yesterday we did the exercise where I said, allow yourself to really feel, imagine what it would be like to be a Buddha, starting from that potential to the maximum, to the realized potential quality, the maximum quality, the realized quality. So, and the next part, how can we unite the practice of the 5 Dhyani Buddhas with the 5 great mothers? It's very easy. So the lotus flowers stay those of self-healing. So white, red, blue, yellow, and green, and then we have Om that looks in our same direction, and then looking towards us, towards the Om, we imagine the E. So we imagine the 2 seed syllables, that one looks at the other. At our throat chakra, we have the red A, and then towards the red we have a red Rama. At our heart chakra, we have the blue Hum looking in our same direction, and then we have the white Bam. At our navel chakra, we have the syllable Tram, that's yellow in color, and the yellow Lam of the earth mandala. And at our secret chakra, that we have the Ri, that is green, and I'm sorry, the Ri and the Yam. And then after that, each one of the syllables transforms into a syllable. So at our crown, we have our Dharma wheel and the space mandala. At our throat, we have a red lotus flower and the fire mandala. At our heart, we have the blue Vajra and the water mandala. At our navel, we have a yellow jewel and the mandala of in the earth mandala. And at our secret chakra, we have a double green Vajra, a green double Vajra, and the wind Vajra. Then we imagine fulfilling the two purposes, light rays and nectars, going out and making offerings to the sacred beings and making offerings to all the sentient beings, and then symbols transform into the actual divinities. So at our crown chakra, we have Virochana, who's actually in union with Akashvadra, and the symbolism of the union of the fathers and the mothers and you'll see this in many other aspects. Even when we unite our hands, this importance of having harmony and balance, union between male and female energy, method and wisdom, reason and feeling, logic and intuition. It's one is not on top of the other. They need to be united and in harmony. In the symbolism that we use, in our ordinary symbolism, in the reality we live, what is one symbol? Just when two people create a moment of union and harmony, it's in a physical union. So the Dhyani Buddha, together with the Great Mother, that union goes much beyond sex. It represents this state of union between male energy, female energy, between the union of that non-dual union of bliss and emptiness. Male energy represents bliss and female energy represents emptiness. So when we visualize, as we generate these two energies in each one of our chakras, when they're at their maximum potential, they unite. I mean, they are both there, they're each there, but they're also in union. And that's why we have at our crown, we have Verochana in union with Akashvadra. At our throat, we have Amitabha in union with Pandavarsini. At our heart, we have Akshobhya in union with Mamaki. At our navel, we have Ratnasambhava, who is in union with Lochana. And at our secret chakra, we have Amoghasiddhi, who's in union with Samayatara. This is a point that sometimes it's kept somehow secret, simply because some concepts, some symbolisms, if they're seen in the wrong way, they take to wrong ideas. I don't know if you've ever heard, or tantric practices are all about sex, or you don't know how many people who've come and people have asked me, why don't you give courses on tantric sex in the center? Someone came to me and said, it's really a great business. So many people would come. So this aside, Now, it's lunchtime and it's even late. I'm not going to open up this subject, but the point here is our starting point is here we're talking about symbolism. It's a symbolism that talks to us about the union of two seemingly opposite things. I mean, we live in a dualistic appearance where a state of peace, the freedom, is found in the balance and a perfect union of both. So where each side becomes part of the whole. And this is a point that is represented here. We're talking about symbolism. We're talking about a symbol. Are you following? And so when we do the practice of the 5 Dhyani Buddhas together with the 5 Great Mothers, we're simply generating them together. And so when we do Om Ahum Tam Ri, A Ram Bam Lam Yam, actually we're inverting the Lam and the Yam because the Earth Mother is together with Anasambhava at our navel, and we do the mudras. We recite the part of the father and then the part of the mother. So we unite the practices. And the completion stage becomes one. The only part that differs is the generation of the body mandala. The rest is the same. The preliminaries are the same. Asking for the blessings are the same. Generating bliss and emptiness and the 3 transformations are the same. What changes is the body mandala that you can do together with the five Dhyani Buddhas, with the 5 Great Mothers, giving emphasis to the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, to the 5 Great Mothers, or to both together. And then the completion stage, we'll see after lunch, is exactly the same. And in the practice of making peace with the environment, he answered. He added the 6 mantras and the 6 mudras and the Oma Hum Huma O techniques to create harmony in the environment. They're extras, let's say, techniques to create harmony in the environment, which we will also explain. Now we'll stop for lunch, and with this we conclude the explanation, this brief explanation on the part of generation stage. And after lunch we will do a brief explanation of the completion stage, and then we'll do the practice together. This is what I have in program. We start at 3:30, and at 3 o'clock I'll be here because we have a blessing we have a blessing from the monks from 3 to 3:30. Everybody's welcome.
Drove Michel Tato ne Gyurchi Kewa Kunto Yanda Lama Dang Dralme Cheki Pela Long Ching Sadan Lamge Yunte Rabzone Dorje Change Kopa Nyur Toba Shua Nimo Dele Tsendele Nime Kuyan Delekshin Ninsen Takto Delekpe Concho Sumke Chingelo Concho Sumke Ngodrubutsol Sumke Trashi
At dawn or at dusk, at night or midday, may the 3 jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness.
the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle all the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness. Oma huntamba lame sangye rinpoche, kyoba lame tamche rinpoche, drimba lame gendu rinpoche, kyamne kuncho sumla chepa bu lojo sambo pa gyu treshi pa tuche tempe trinle yar pegye drolo zambe zebra panden lame shela chepa bu. Buon appetito.
Have a good lunch, and we'll see each other after.